ensuring that student ready is the environment in which they're placed. And in this particular age, the utilization of technology, ICT, should be incorporated into every single subject area. Every single subject area, whether it's mathematics, history, science, you name it. Why? Because that is the way of the world. That is the utilization within industry. You know, even if you are wanting to be a chef.
Yes.
You know, the technology within today's kitchens. I mean, you go over at Kersner, or you go to some large, or even some of the smaller facilities, and you see that way that they have to interact and use the machinery and the technology.
Yes.
Has to require a special and a different type of training. So yes, we need that infusion of ICT. And you talk about practical terms. I mean, in London and even in Barbados,
yes,
you know, they are exposing their students at elementary, in some instances preschool level, to the use of computers, training through, I think it's what is it called, whiteboards, whiteboards where they use the graceful. Yes, exactly. Where the teacher is teaching through the computer, the students are utilizing, you know, the computers at their desk. You know, so we have to, you know, we have to change the way that we approach learning, and it is learning.
I think Philip touched on a very good point, and that is that, and when I said Blackboard, I'm referring to a system that is used at the College of the Bahamas currently, which is an online-based system that's called Blackboard, and teachers are able to put programs on these computers, and you go in and you do it through interactive sessions. And see, students get so agitated. They sit into a classroom where there's a blackboard and some boring teacher talking about something. And yet at home, they go and they're watching TV.
Boring teacher.
You see, and that's a part of it. Yes, you know, yes. And they go home and they're watching TV, they're listening to their iPod, and they're on the computer at the same time. That's the world that they live in outside of the classroom.
Okay.
You see, and so we must begin to take seriously an investment into education that prepares people for the future. Okay. And what we also need to consider is a point that I made earlier when I talked about us becoming our own program in software development. If we're serious about education, we need to begin to encourage our writers and our thinkers to develop books that are Bahamian, systems that are Bahamian, software that is Bahamian, so that when you're learning statistics, you're not only learning American statistics because that's the only textbooks that you have. And that's the type of thing that we need to push for when we talk about a national plan.
Okay, thank you, Anastasia.
In terms of education, and in terms of including this technology, this new method of learning, I think we have a lot of experts out there who need to become a part of the education system. I mean, Dr. Rollins going into a science class once a week and bringing all of his new gadgets and whatever, you know, that I think excites someone to want to know, what is that? How does that work? A Tony Ferguson going into an accounting class and talking about how we're actually doing it, not what's in the textbook,
yes,
but how it's being done day to day to day.
Here. Yes.
Today, now,
okay,
you know,
okay,
because the textbook, I mean, and everyone knows from school, I mean, there is that transition from what you learn in the textbook and what happens in the workplace. And that's why a lot of our students are not prepared for the workplace, because we're not taking people who are in the workplace into the schools and making that linkage.
Okay, let me ask you this, because this is what I was trying to get at originally, Phil. These students, many of which we talk about all the time, every year, who leave school, who are not ready, just got leaving certificates, didn't get that A, that B, that C in the standard classes. I got to tell you, a lot of them have these gadgets, and these gadgets are not simple. And I don't see any of them on the side of the road going, Johnny, why you don't show me how this cell phone? This is what I see. Okay? Now, I'm saying, is the technology itself, because it happens to just, they seem to connect with it. It doesn't seem complex. In fact, we've proven that a 3-year-old is just not afraid of the computer. They don't know to be afraid. I'm saying because of that ability or that link that doesn't seem to be connected to, well, if you don't know math, you're not going to be able to use these computers or all these gadgets. Can we use that lucky state that we find ourselves in to get more, as Phil said, learning happening?
Well, you know, Dr. Wisdom, I think one thing that we have to really focus on is the failings of family in our country. And if you don't have parental support, I mean, I can tell you right now, I think persons who come from Long Island, for example, where my mother hails from, they're extremely proud of their educational performance.
Okay, now that's commercial number one. That's your one right there, okay? All right, that's so Long Island has had a commercial, and I...
Crooked
Island had one too. But reason I mention that is because NGM Major High School, they perform exceedingly well every year on the standardized tests, the BGCSE and the BJCs. And I think the major component that fuels that success is parental involvement. And I really feel that we have to get back to basics, and that is basics of family life. Mothers and fathers are extremely important. There are difficulties that they go through day in and day out, and being in as we've become so commercialized as a tourism center, it puts a lot of stresses on families, and so parents are no longer they're no longer up to coming home and being intimately involved in the work that their children are engaged in. Okay. But you have to make those sacrifices, because if children will always look for leaders until they become of age and they feel that they themselves are now leaders. Okay. And so what I'm saying is, if it doesn't appear to be important to the parents, it's not going to be important to the children. The reason why they're so adept at handling these cell phones and computers and all that other stuff, because that is the trend. All of the other children are doing it. It appears that if you're not doing it, then you're not cool. So obviously you're going to learn it. Likewise, if you stress the importance of education and you instill competition in it, they recognize that other children are taking it seriously. It's a very important thing. They too are going to have to buckle up and do the same.
No, Dr. Rollins, we're going to wind this section of time. It's just flying. But I just want to leave it and find your feelings here. You're not talking about turning the clock back when you say going back to basics. You're talking about just recognizing what students need, basically, or are you literally talking about doing it like it was in the old days?
What I'm talking about is understanding what we need to make that plan that they talked about earlier successful. And fundamentally, being able to text on a telephone or cell phone and being able to get on IM, instant messaging and all that other stuff isn't going to allow that plan to really take hold and be a success. And so I believe firmly that the fundamentals have to be in place, and they have to be backed by the emphasis of the government on saying that we're not going to accept any social promotion anymore. If you don't make the grade, you can't advance. Because, and I want to say this story. There's a young man who I went to school with at St. John's College.